So I just want to speak into the actual walk, because we begin to speak in our earlier conversation about the death walk of the called and the chosen. The death walk of the called and the chosen. And somebody may ask, why did we call it the death walk? Why is it the death walk? Because, and I'll explain, it's very, very specific, very direct. Jesus spoke about dying to this flesh, dying to the world, and the desires of the world. He clearly spoke about that in John chapter 6 in particular, when he's conversating with his disciples, and he's speaking to them in a way that so that they would understand that if they're going to follow him, that they have to choose either to die to the desires of the world and the things that are of the world if they're going to follow him. And so he speaks like this: if you're willing to eat my flesh and drink my blood, then you will have fellowship with me. You'll have part with me. And can you imagine? Jesus is talking about eating flesh, drinking blood, and the disciples have just come through a season and a time of trying to decide whether they should be following Jesus or not, because it's so much controversy going on with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and even the high priest of the synagogue. They are very adamant that Jesus is this false Christ. And so now they come to a meeting with Jesus, and in the meeting he's saying, he that is not willing, or he that rather who will have part and fellowship in his ministry will be those that are willing to eat his flesh and drink his blood. What Jesus was speaking of was those that are willing to suffer with him. Somebody turned around and asked Jesus the question, then who can bear this? Who's able to deal with this? And then another person said, well, in terms of their family, they begin to talk about their family. And Jesus says, my mother and my father are those who do the will of my Father. My brother and my sisters, my mother and my father is those that seek to do the will of my Father. So Jesus, in this sense, is very, very keen about, who's following him. And he was trying to say to them, if you're going to follow me, you have to go through a certain level of death. Death to the desires, death to the world, death to your own dreams, sometimes your own visions. And he knew that he had a certain period of time that he had to fulfill in the earth. So if you read John chapter 6 and verse 66, you will see it says plainly, many of the disciples from that day followed him no more. Because the big thing was, who can live a life like this, where it's almost like you don't want us to go to bury the dead. You're telling us, let the dead bury the dead. And then you're saying, if anyone wants to follow you, they have to be willing to eat your flesh and drink your blood. Well, that didn't sit well with a lot of them, because some of them were very educated. Some of them were very intellectual. Some of them were very, and some of them in their community, they've come from various professions. And now Jesus is sounding like a cannibalist. Eat my flesh, drink my blood, then you'll be able to have fellowship with me. And some of them was not buying into that plan. Many of them left. Jesus then turns to Peter and asks Peter and John, he says, are y'all planning on leaving also? And then Peter turns, and this is the scripture of the legacy. And his response to Jesus is priceless. He said, where can we go from here? Because you are carrying the words of spirit and life. Where are we going to go from here? You have the words of spirit and life, so we're not leaving. Even though it says many left, and it uses the word disciples. So these were people that were a part of Jesus' ministry. They were at the crusades. They were throwing the cloth for ushers. They were seating the people in the different levels of the mountain. And now when Jesus began to tell them about staying with him, eating his flesh, drinking his blood, what was he talking about? He was simply saying, if you're going to walk with me, be willing to suffer with me. Be willing to go through with me. Be willing to go through something. Oh, I know your family, some of your families don't like me. I know a lot of your friends don't understand my ministry. But the least you can do, if you feel as if you're called with me, walk with me. Go through this with me. Be willing to die with me. Be a partaker and a fellowship of my suffering. That's what Jesus was talking about. And until people come to that place in ministry, you're not fit to walk with that prophet. You're not fit to leave that man alone, leave that woman of God alone, because you're going to become a frustration in their ministry. Because it's going to get hard. It's going to get difficult. It's going to get like, it's going to seem like all the bottom must fall out. So Jesus wasn't trying to get them to leave. He was just telling them, if they were not prepared to go through some level of test, trial, or tribulation, leave now. Go now. But everybody didn't go. Some did. Peter said, we're not going. John said, we're not going. Those disciples who were close to Jesus, who was not mixed up in the mingling and the tingling of the crowd, they were the ones that stayed. This is not true. Huh? They stayed. And they said, wherever you go, I will go. That's why I used the example. In our previous teaching, Demas left. Demas left, and Paul was very specific. He said, because he loved this present world. Orpah left because she loved the present world. She couldn't think about being away from home. She could not even imagine being in Bethlehem or wherever Naomi was from, and there was no Wi-Fi. There was no internet. Like, are you kidding me? But see, if you want to get to the place where you're greatly used of God, if you want to get to that place where your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, like Ruth's name was, you have to take the calculated risk. That's all I'm saying to you today. This death walk is about taking the calculated risk. In your going, God will bring a miracle. In your obedience, God will bring a miracle. The miracle is never always at the forefront. I want to repeat that. The miracle is never always at the front. It takes a death. It takes a dying. It takes it's a faith walk. And when you start on that journey now, as you're walking, as you're going with that assignment, with that ministry, with that prophet, Karahasalaka, with that church, with that apostle, and you're busy doing what you're doing for the kingdom more than what you plan to do for the world, God will send miracles along the way. I've never seen the righteous forsaken, and I've never seen the seed of God beg bread. So that's the walk right there. The walk of authenticity, the walk of integrity, the walk that will say to you, regardless of what looks like, what people have to say about the church, that's okay, you don't care. That's like a mindset you have to come to. Like, I don't really care. I don't care what y'all think about my church. I don't care what y'all think about my pastor. I don't care what y'all think about my prophet. I don't care what you think about my sister or brother who goes to the church with me. What you have to say, I don't care. And that right there is a word for every child of God. Because it doesn't matter. And let me say something to you right now, talking about the death walk of the called and the chosen. Any prophet of God that is truly a prophet, that is truly any apostle that's truly an apostle, that man one day is going to offend some people. That prophet is going to do something that looks queer and strange in the eyes of some people. It's going to look like that person is a fake, a fraud, and he doing some type of magical or mystical powers. Because why? To the natural man, or I should say the carnal man, they don't understand it. So that person is going to be perceived as a witch doctor. Because all in people's mind is witch. All in people's mind is witchcraft. That's all you know is witchcraft. But if you take a child that is maybe 7 or 12 years old, and all you've taught them was about the angelic realm, about the prophetic, about the thing, that child is going to say, this is powerful. They don't see nothing about witchcraft. So that's important for you to understand. The walk, the death walk, and the call of the chosen is a serious walk. You have to keep your mind straight. Your mindset got to be right. And that's why, so I'll leave you with this scripture out of Isaiah 26:3. It says, he will keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on him. Thou shalt keep him in perfect peace, Isaiah 26:3, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusted in thee. The key secret to being and staying in a ministry, staying in a work, staying in a church, moving with your prophet or your apostle is to keep your mind stayed on God. The minute your mind comes off of God, you begin to fall. You begin to dry up. You go from the front row to the third row to the fifth row. Next thing you know, we can't find you in the crowd because your mind came off of him. Just like Peter, once the mind comes off of Jesus, the eyes and the focus comes off of Jesus, you begin to sink. And that's what happened to a lot of people today. Their mind is dual. They have not yet mastered the art of keeping themselves transfixed on Jesus. Transfixed. So I'm praying that I'm helping you. I'm praying that I'm helping you in Jesus Christ's name. Because Doris, your mother, is a representation of what I'm talking about when I come to the word hindrance. Are you hearing me? I don't know who in this family was involved in what they call housekeeping. All her life. She was what? A housekeeper. Chateau Rasata.